one of the things that I'd like to teach you how to do is create an FK-IK blend switch as well as the controls for the FK part of the arms. Now, FK stands for forward kinematics, and that's essentially where you pick the joints and you rotate them. There's no IKs involved. I don't like really picking the joints. It just makes it for a harder animation setup. I'd rather pick the control objects. I'm going to show you first of all how to turn on and off the blending and how we can modify our control setup to have some controls set in place for forward kinematic animation. Okay, so a lot of people don't like to use IK when they animate arms. The reason being, if I key it here, okay, and then I key it in this position, the system is going to animate this in a straight line, okay, and that's not really how we move. We move in arcs, okay, because these objects are rotating and not translating in reality. And a lot of people like to have the freedom to pose their character, but then to switch over to FK and have full control over the joints. Now, FK and IK blending is is built into the system. All we have to do is select the IK handle, scroll down, and there's an IK blend. We'll just set this to 0. Okay. Now, this little control object doesn't work. Instead, you pick the joint and you rotate it. You pick this joint and you rotate it. And it can become really a daunting task to go in and find all the joints and all the pieces. So for us to add this type of functionality, let me set this back to 1 here. We're going to need to make some modifications to our rig. And as you can see, one of the things that happens is this cube gets left behind. So, and we want to keep this circle on the wrist, so we're going to have to reconstrain the wrist back on the wrist control to the wrist joint itself. So there's a couple of little setup things that we're going to have to do, and nothing impossible, but I want to show you how to now edit your rig and add that type of functionality. And you can see I've got it over here on this side. So let me open up that lesson 15 IK FK switch. This is right where we left off. There's nothing added to this. I just did that earlier so you can see the example of what we wanted to achieve. All right, I'll go ahead and do the left side. Let me get this lined up here. And the first thing that we're going to need to do is build ourselves some control curves that can represent the joints when we go into FK mode. So we'll start off with a NURBS circle. And I'll just snap this up here. Let's rotate these 90 degrees in Z. And let's scale them up a bit. Okay, so this is for the shoulder. Okay. And I'll call this right shoulder FK. We'll go ahead and delete freeze transformations, delete history. Get that cleaned up like that. All right, let's duplicate and snap one more here. This is for the elbow control. Okay, like this. And this will be the right elbow FK. All right, very good. So we got those two made, and we're essentially going to have 3 circles. This one, and we already have one at the wrist that's already set up. We're just going to have to break or delete its constraint. Okay, so we'll start on this end. Let's take a look. We have a wrist control constraint here, and let me show you a little trick that Delano does here at our office, and that's he'll highlight these, Control C, paste it up here in the selection. Now that has actually selected the point constraint node for this little constraint, and now I can hit delete, and now I don't have a constraint. So if I pick this up and move it, no more constraint. Okay. So let's reconstraint this. What we'll want to do is select the wrist joint, shift select the wrist control, and we'll do a point constraint. Okay, so now when I move, it moves again, but if I was to go to IK blending and I turn it off, then my circle will still move because it's connected to my joint. All right, let's go ahead and point constraint these guys. Okay, so we'll select the joint, shift select the circle, go to constraint, point, select the joint, select the circle, point. Now let's go ahead and test this. This is still IK mode, but my shoulders move correctly. Okay, elbows are moving. Everything is moving good. All right. Now let's set up some orient constraints. So we'll select the curve, shift select the joint. We'll go to constraint, orient. The reason being, I want to be able to animate or rotate this control curve, and it will then rotate these joints. All right, I'll do the same here. Constraint, orient. Okay, perfect. Everything looks good. Now that I've got all this set up, it's kind of confusing. So which one do I use? Do I use these curves? Do I use this elbow constraint or control? Do I use this wrist? How do I animate? Because right now, if I grab these and rotate, nothing happens. So let's add on this wrist control an IK-FK blend attribute. So we'll go to channels, add attribute. There it is. Okay, this is going to be a float, and we'll say IK-FK blend. Okay, and we'll say minimum of 0, maximum of, let's say, 10, and we'll default it at 0. Okay, now this is pretty easy to set up. We'll go in and we'll say set driven key. The driver is this IK-FK blend. The driven is going to be that little attribute on this IK handle. So we'll say load driven. It's going to be this IK blend. All right, so we'll key this, and that means it's an IK mode. All right, I'll go ahead and set this IK-FK blend to 10, and I will turn off by hitting 0 the IK blend. Okay, we'll key this. So what do we have? Well, at this point, now that it's set to 0, I can go into FK mode. Okay, I can rotate my joint, grab my shoulder, I can lift my shoulder. Okay, I could do all kinds of cool stuff with this. And what I'd like to do is hide these controls when I'm not using them. Okay, and I still have some parenting to do, so I'll do that here in just a second. But what I'd like to be able to do is hide what I'm not using and show what I'm using. So right now I'm in FK mode. Okay, so FK blend is set to 10. Let's set this back to 0. Now I'm in IK mode. So as you look here, pick this up, everything works good. So how can we make this happen? Well, another set driven key. Let's go over here. And we've got some things that we're going to pick up here. So right now we're in IK mode. So what we want to do is hide these curves. Okay, those are the driven. The driver is going to be the IK-FK blend. Okay, so we'll just say visibility of these guys is going to be 0. Turn them off. We'll key it. Okay, so let me move this over so you can see. I hid those little curves. When I go to FK mode, however, I want to show those two things, those two curves. So I'll set this to visibility on, and I'll key it. All right, so now as I switch this back and forth, you notice they disappear and they become active. All right, how can I use this with these other pieces? Well, let's go ahead and select this cube and the elbow control. We'll go ahead and load those as driven. Same thing with the visibility. Okay, let's just double check what we're at. We're in IK-FK blend 0, which is IK control. We'll key it. All right, we'll set this to 10. And at this point, we want to hide these two controls. Okay, we'll key that. So now let's take a look. If I grab this, this wrist control, when I go to 0, those controls disappear and these become active. When I go to 10, these become active and those hide. So last but not least, all I need to do is parent the elbow to the shoulder. Hit P to parent those. Okay, so now when I move my shoulder, get my rotate tool here, everything moves correctly. And my wrist is acting stupid because it's not parented to this joint. But if I parent this, I'm going to mess up all kinds of other things. So I'm going to have to do that little trick that I did with the grouping. Okay, so I'll just select that wrist control, hit Control G to group it. This will be the right wrist Control GRP. Okay, I'll hit Insert so I can put the pivot point right there at the wrist joint. Okay, and let me open up my outliner and hit F to frame that group. Because what I'm going to need to do, there it is right here, right wrist control group. I'm going to take this elbow FK control, control click the right wrist control group, and then do a constraint parent. So I needed to parent this wrist to this elbow, but if I did that, I would break all my constraints, so I did it with a group. All right, what does this give me? Well, now when I pick up my shoulder, my elbow looks good, my wrist looks good. When I pick up my wrist, my elbow, my wrist looks good. So all of this stuff is working. Okay, again, this works, so that's cool. And let me turn off my IKFK blend. Now we're in IK mode. I can pick this up. So I've really got the best of everything. I can switch very quickly. And what's beautiful is I can animate between the two, and the system will do everything for me. Okay, so watch. I'm in FK mode. Okay, I rotate my hand, and this thing that's keeping me behind, it's there for a reason. Okay, and let me grab my shoulder. Okay, now watch. I want to go from here to the IK blend mode. So watch. All I have to do is animate that down, and it goes from one to the other. Very nice. Okay, I'll just undo that. So very cool. That is that setup right there. I'm going to go ahead and stop this lesson, and I'm going to quickly do the other side. I'll get that added in, and I'll shoot that as well so you can see how I do it. But I'm going to do it as bigger sets of data, so I'm not going to explain every little step. And then we'll follow up with parenting all this stuff together and adjusting our channel box so we only animate the pieces that we need.